Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today, I guarantee we have one of the most interesting conversations that you're going to have been able to listen into in a long time. We're going to talk about data. And we all know in this digital world, data keeps ballooning. We have more and more and more of the data. But we can very quickly lose control of that data. How do we grab control back? How do we grab control in a way that is secure? We're not worried about cybersecurity and the links and things like that, that we can actually use that data for growing our businesses and servicing our clients and creating the experience that we know we need to. So on today, we have expert, Dr. Eric Cole. So I'm going to list off a few accolades. And if I don't get them right, I'm going to have you maybe correct me a little bit, but you've got a PhD in cybersecurity. You're a best-selling author on the Wall Street Journal list. You actually are also an entrepreneur yourself. You started out hacking for the CIA. I've lost trail here. I just love to turn it over to you before we get started here. Maybe just provide a little bit more color commentary to your background.
The way I like to describe myself is I am that geeky kid that never wanted to grow up. I love solving problems. I love dealing with hard technical issues. People ask, what do I do for fun? And I'm like, oh, I brainstorm and come up with new ideas for companies. And they're like, no, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, no, I love creating solutions for problems. And that's why I love working with networking, with executives, with cybersecurity, because the reality today is any cybersecurity solution we come up with now, the adversary will figure out a way to bypass it within 3 to 6 months. So with cybersecurity, what works today doesn't work tomorrow. So you always have to be creative, coming up with new ways of solving these complex problems.
Well, a couple of things right away I want to jump on there is, one, what doesn't work today or works today isn't going to work tomorrow. Our networks are changing dramatically. A year ago or so, we didn't have all of a sudden satellite technology that was helping us create a connected, resilient environment. The Verizons, the T-Mobiles of the world are investing billions of dollars into wireless first network. So we have a lot of pipes coming into our network and a lot of technologies to control failover and everything. But that creates its own issues. And as that evolves, how do we keep that not only secure, but you talk about data quality and improving that quality. So here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to just ask you, if you could give us your definition of what losing control of our data is today, and how do we even think about getting that back?
So losing control of our data is a term that we've all heard. It's called the cloud. It's called cloud security. Just think about this for a moment. How much of our lives do we live on our cell phone, our iPad, our electronic devices? But here's the reality. Where is that data? Most of that data is not actually stored locally. And we love the idea that we can go in. I'm an iPhone user. I can go into the Apple store and I can get a new iPhone and it syncs with the cloud and can put all my data back on the device. Well, here's the reality. The data is never really on that device. The data is out in the cloud. So just think for a second. Where is all of your information? Where is all of your data? Who's controlling it? Who's protecting it? Who's securing it? And who's locking it down? Because here's the reality. If you decided to disconnect from the internet, think of how little data you have that you can take with you. Most of that data is not under your control. And we love our apps, we love our devices, we love our networks. But the reality is the reason why they're building out all these new high-speed wireless cellular networks is because they want us to be interconnected. We joke about people wearing, oh, I'm never going to have an implant in my arm. I'm never going to have them put a chip in my kid. But here's the reality. You're already chipped. Think about, where do you go other than the shower where you don't have your cell phone with you? You are being tracked 24/7. People can go in and find your location, and people don't realize this, but I work on expert witness cases in courts where you have to pinpoint either for crime scenes or divorces or for intellectual property, for meetings or things like that. And we can go in and we can trace back in individuals' lives everywhere they went for the last 12 months. And you've even seen that with the unfortunate shooting in New York City, where the FBI was able to go in and trace the exact route the person took before and after that fatal shooting. We're being tracked and monitored, yet none of us realize it. And none of us just recognize the fact that privacy has left the station and it's probably not coming back for a long, long time.
Okay, that's kind of scary, but we live with the benefits of it every day. If you could then translate that into that we've lost control of our data, how do we get it back? Now, talk to us about, I'm the CEO of a company. I'm director of cybersecurity inside of my company. What does losing control of that data and how do I get it back mean for me?
So losing control of the data means be careful of where you're putting your information, where you're putting your data. A great example is AI. You have ChatGPT, you now have DeepSeek, which actually took over as the #1 downloaded app. And I have friends of mine that they're like, Eric, check this out. And they give me their AI engine and I can ask questions and I can say, hey, Steve, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it's like I'm having a conversation with you and they think this is so cool. Then I ask them a question. What if your digital twin gets kidnapped? And they're like, whoa, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you got kidnapped, that would be problematic. And they're like, yeah, it has all your knowledge, your thoughts, your ideas and everything. Well, guess what? Most of us are putting that information out there with less security than our bank. Think of this scenario. When you wake up in the morning and you decide to check your bank account, you open up your app, it does face recognition. It asks for a password. It texts you a one-time code. And if you're traveling in a hotel in a different city that you haven't been before, it will send an email alert that says, hey, we've noticed you logged into a new location. And then it's encrypted, protected, and secured. And our data is safe. And that is just our banking information. But then we're uploading all of our knowledge, all of our information, all of our thoughts into these AI tools. And the next time you open up ChatGPT, realize it didn't ask you for a password. It didn't go for two-factor. It didn't check your location. It didn't do any of that, which means if I can get control of your device, your phone, your laptop, I can't get into your bank. I can't touch your money, but I can control your life. I can kidnap your digital twin. So the way we get it back as executives or business leaders is we have to start putting better controls in place. We have to recognize that security is not embedded as much as we think. And we need to start putting encryption on our devices. We need to start adding two-factor authentication. We need to start adding in VPNs because the reality is we're using all of these apps. We're loving AI. We're loving all these different tools out there in my business plan. And I have an app for that. And I upload my entire business plan into the app. And then I'm on an airplane and I try to access it and the Wi-Fi wasn't working. And it's like, oh, you can't access it. And it hit me. I'm like, wait, that business plan isn't on my lap. It's not even stored locally. I don't even have a copy of it, which means if that company decides to go away or disappear, they have all of that data and information. So you wonder why Elon Musk is in the news. It's because he's brilliant. Why do you think he bought Twitter? It wasn't for social media. It was for the data. Now, watch this scenario. Elon Musk owns all public information with Twitter. He knows how people think, act, and behave. Now he's teamed up with President Trump, and he is now going into Treasury, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland, and they're all saying it's okay because it's read-only access. That's the problem. I don't care about people changing the data. I don't want them reading it. And he's pulling all that information. Now imagine the most brilliant person, the richest man in the world, has all this government data, has all this public data with Twitter, and you start correlating that with AI engines, and the world becomes really, really scary, really, really quick.
You paint a very, very vivid picture because We want connectivity in our networks so that we access all of that data. But at the same time, whether it's our business plans, our competitive information, our total go to market plans, our customer data, we have so much information that our competitors would love to have. So, how do we make networks that are resilient, always on, connected, fail over to all kinds of different ISP connections and satellite connections? How do we get everything that we want? Because we want to be connected. We don't want to give that up.
So the way you do this in the scenario I lay out for people is we're used to living in peacetime conditions. Well, we're operating at peace that everyone can be trusted. Our information is safe. Our information can flow and store anywhere we want. And that's how we've operated for the last 5 or 10 years over these networks. But here's the reality. We're at war. We're in a cyber war, and we need to, as leaders and executives, start operating in wartime conditions. Now, in the United States, we've been fortunate. We've never had to live through a war, at least in our current lifetime. But I've traveled and I've been in Iran and in other countries where there's wars going on, the Ukraine. And when you're in a wartime, people act differently. They're more careful. They're more protected. They don't trust as many people. They're much more safer in how they do things. And the reality is we have to recognize that on the internet, whether we like to admit it or not, people always hate when I say the term, but World War III has already started. If you look at what we're doing, what the Chinese are doing, what the Russians are doing, what the Iranians, the Venezuelans, the North Koreans are doing against us and we against them, we're at war. We're in cyber war. Trillions of dollars are being lost. Millions of records are being stolen, and we need to start acting and thinking like we're in wartime conditions, which means be a little more paranoid, protect and lock down your information, limit and control the apps. One of my favorite exercises is how many apps do you have on your phone and how many are you actually using? Do you realize every free app, for it to be free, means it has to track your location, your camera, or your microphone? When was the last time you went in and you actually checked on Android or iPhone or whatever your smartphone is? You looked under what apps are tracking your location? What apps are accessing your mic? What apps are accessing your video camera? And I will tell you, I have never had a single person who's done that that's not shocked and awed at what is going on. They look at me going, Eric, why do 200 apps have access to my microphone? Why are they accessing my location? And the reason is free isn't free. We think free is free, but what free is saying is, I will give you the app, and in return, you give me all your data and all your information. And when people think about that, they think about it differently. I very rarely use a free app. I will only use paid apps. And people are like, why in the world, if there's a free version and a $7.99 version, why would you pay? And the difference is my life and my data is worth more than $7. If I pay the $7, they don't track me. If you go for the free option, they track and monitor you. And just a side note for parents is I always love in restaurants or when I hang out with friends and they have their younger kids and they're giving them their app. And so many parents are like, oh, every 5 minutes, the kid has to click a commercial because we don't want to pay for the app. And we will just go for the free version. And I look at them going, have you lost your mind? You're not paying $5.99 to keep your child safe. Do you realize they're tracking and monitoring your child's behavior? And for $5.99, you can keep your child's information safe, and it shifts and changes everything. But the problem is we're thinking that we're in safe peacetime conditions, and the reality is we're at war, and we need to think and act like we're in a cyber war.
Okay, I didn't know I was going to need a drink for this podcast. What I want to do is the audience that's listening to you right now is thinking, okay, I'm in charge of my network. I'm in charge of my company's network or in charge of my company. What are the things that I need to be doing now? If you're talking to a company right now, what do we need to be doing that we're probably not doing right now?
First and foremost is awareness, inventory, all the apps, all the software, and all the cloud storage that you, your company, and your employees are using. And here's the scary part. Most companies have no idea of how bad it is. Because here's the reality. There used to be this concept called BYOD. And it was like, bring your own device. And the idea was, instead of the company giving you a device, we bring our own and basically we commingle. Personal and corporate data reside together. And BYOD got a lot of pushback and a lot of hee-haw and a lot of people like, no way. Well, guess what? In this current day and age, just about every company is doing BYOD. Your employees are commingling their personal and your work data. Now, here's the question. Who is really controlling that? If that employee leaves the company, who really owns the data? Who really owns the information? What can they do with that data? So to me, you need to start inventorying and really getting control of where your data is. What are all the apps that are being used? And then start making decisions. Do we really want our employees to have all of our corporate data on their personal device? Now, here's the crazy part. If I ask a CEO that question, do we really want all your employees to have company data on personal devices that they bring home and give to their kids? They would say, absolutely not. But then I ask a different question. Do you want your employees to have access to mail and texting on their personal devices to use for work? They say, absolutely. Well, guess what? You can't answer those questions differently. If you're saying yes, you're allowing them to use email and texting, then you're allowing all of your corporate data to be on personal devices. So it's about awareness, inventorying, and start making hard decisions of something. Maybe we don't want our employees to check emails from their phone. Little loss in productivity, but guess what? Much better control of our data and our information in the long run.
Yeah, we're on Slack, we're on Teams, we're on email, we're on project management apps on our phones, we're staying in touch, we're proving things. If you think about the commingling that's happening right now, it's amazing. So this leads to another question, because that's done on our personal devices. Companies, there is a very large trend in the network infrastructure industry on what's called wireless first. And it makes sense because we're in distributed multi-location environments where our employees are accessing from distributed areas that aren't always close to a wired connection. Our customers are accessing on their phones lots of times how we're serving them. It's almost impossible to decouple these things. And we want to provide that wireless first kind of connection. Is there a safe way to do that? This wireless first trend. And now I'm thinking as the CEO of my company, is there a safe way that I can provide that?
There is, and it's down to technology that has existed for a while and that we forget about, which is encrypt, encrypt, encrypt. Set up VPNs on all your devices. It's nice and simple. Encrypt all your information, encrypt all of your data. Because the reality is, you're right, the old model where I had servers in my data center that I controlled and I had wires coming in. If somebody got control of one of your big providers, one of their major switching hubs, they maybe could get some information from a client. But now with wireless first and wireless interconnectivity and cloud storage, think what happens if one of these providers have one of their towers or servers compromised or controlled by an adversary. Not only your data, but all of your companies and competitors' data is also stolen. And this is what people don't realize is they're like, Eric, we've noticed that the amount of attacks against our company have decreased. And I said, yes and no. I said, the amount of attacks of directly targeting your servers has decreased because guess what? You don't have servers. you don't have wired connections, guess what they're targeting? They're not targeting you, they're targeting the data center. They're targeting the backbone providers. They're going after the providers of wireless technology because guess what? If you can gain control of one of them, you have everyone's data. Just look at the SolarWinds example. That's a brilliant example of what we call supply chain attacks, which is the new trend. They didn't go after the government. They didn't go after State Department. What they did is they said, we know that all these government agencies, all these private companies use SolarWinds. So we're going to target them. We're going to go after them. We're going to put a backdoor in their software without them knowing it. And we're going to have them distribute it in the next update. This isn't a criticism. This is a reality of any software company. They're now pushing out updates to all of their clients. And then at an opportune moment, they're then taking over and controlling those networks. And the craziest part is this is not just networking companies. If you remember last year, if you heard about CrowdStrike's one of the top providers. Their systems were taken down and it caused airlines, banks, hospitals to be paralyzed for multiple days because something happened with their software. So now it's not about protecting our networks. It's not about securing our servers because we don't have them. Now the question is, do you trust your vendors? Do you trust your providers? What security do they have in place? Because here's the crazy part. We're paranoid about our data and we put all these controls in place for our employees, but then our employee will go out and without even a PO, they'll sign up for a new app that our company is using to do data management or anything we want, maybe paying a couple $100. So they put it on a credit card and they put on an expense report. And we now bypass all of our security measures because we're allowing our employees to bring in untrusted vendors that haven't been vetted or haven't been verified.
So you started out that by answering encryption, encryption, encryption. And you ended that with saying, you're right, we got all kinds of employees that are inviting all those cloud apps. IT's not controlling that typically. We're just creating an environment where you want to add another, you want to add another, you want to add another. So how do we control that? Is there a process where we need to be vetting every single app that comes into our cloud infrastructure? Is that what you're saying, or what is your recommendation?
The bad answer to your question is yes, you need to vet and verify every app, which is not practical. It's not reasonable. It's not going to happen. Here's the correct answer. You need to, as an executive, have an approved list of apps that our company uses. And these are the only apps that you're allowed to install and use in our environment. You vet, you verify, you verify. There's actually companies out there that you can go and they will go and give you the trust security rating and risk rating for all of these different companies, all these different apps. So now you can go in and choose, okay, I want a program management app. These are the three. Which vendor have the better security practices and the better controls in place? And now we're going in and we're telling our employees what you can install, what you can use. So now security at companies today, when we work with our clients, we're not installing firewalls and IDSs and IPSs because guess what? The cloud has that taken care of. What we're doing is we're installing monitoring on all devices at the client to control and protect the apps, the data, and the information. If you want to win this war, you have to control the client devices. You have to protect the client devices and you have to inventory what software resides on your clients.
So in other words, what you're saying is, let's embrace the reality. We are going to have devices that our employees and our clients are using and commingling data. They are going to be requesting and downloading and adding applications. We are going to be in a wireless first environment. That's the trend. We can't fight that. The war is going to be fought on that front. So understanding those are the rules of engagement in this war, what can we do? Okay. You painted a very vivid picture. Did I get that right? Or is there something to add to that?
The only thing I would add to that is the other way we win this war is simplification. Simplify the endpoint. I right now, and it was something that started off as, to be honest with you, Adair, me and my friends were geek and we dare each other to do things. And the dare was, can you live your entire life on an iPad with 10 apps? That was the dare. And it has now turned in that I didn't even realize it. But for the last 14 months, all I travel with is this. It has 10 apps on it. It has encryption. It has protection. It has lockdown measures in place. It has VPNs. And I do everything from this device when I travel. Now, I also have a studio because for recordings, but when I'm traveling, I don't have a laptop. I don't have 3 cell phones. I have my iPad and my cell phone. That's it. Simple, easy. You look at a lot of these companies and even executives and a lot of my friends, and I crack up because we go to dinner and they have like 3 cell phones. I feel like when I was back working for the government and doing military, like at the end of the day, when you take off your belt, you have all your guns and your bullets and you unpack. I sit down with my friends. It's like they're unloading on the table. I'm like, you carry all that with you on your device. They just have so much tech and so many apps. And the name of the game is simplification. What if you just lived your life on 2 devices? What if you just lived your life on 10 apps? It sounds crazy, but the reality is it makes things so much simpler and protected. I know where my data is. It's only in 1 or 2 locations. I back it up, I encrypt it, I secure it, I check it, I verify it. So I am very careful of using any new apps, using any new devices. And you got to just really start being cautious of what you're using and how you're living your life. And my recommendation to anyone listening is, what if you took an exercise of simplifying your tech life? We go in every year and we clean out our garages. We declutter our houses. I crack up now. We just got a big dumpster and I just filled it up with a bunch of garbage, physical stuff. But when was the last time we did that electronically? When was the last time we went in to our devices and cleaned them up, removed them, and simplified?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I have one last question for you, Eric, because we've covered a lot of territory on this podcast already. If there was, for this business audience that is in charge of their networks, in charge of their company's data, in charge of their company's success, what's the one single takeaway that you would have them want to remember from this podcast episode?
The one takeaway would be, you are a target. Your company is a target. I'm not trying to be Chicken Little that the sky is falling, but here's the reality, my friends. Over the next 12 months, it is a guarantee that your company will be a target of a cyber attack. It is a guarantee. You might not detect it. You might not be aware of it. You might not even realize it. We work with clients where we go in and they have been compromised for 3 years and had no idea. Because here's the reality. When you're compromised today, they're not defacing your website. They're not necessarily holding your data ransom immediately. What they want is access to your information. So they're breaking in and silently capturing all your data. Imagine if somebody broke into your house and installed an invisible video camera in the corner. You would probably never know. It's super scary. If somebody broke into your house and went into your bedroom and in one of the lights or one of the corners, they put a pinhole camera, you would probably never know. And they're monitoring your behavior 24/7. That would freak you out. Guess what? That is probably happening already, where somebody has access to either your phone or your devices. And what you need to do is recognize you're a target, start recognizing, and ask yourself the question, how would I operate if my device was bugged? How would I operate if my company was already compromised? And start going, I would probably start cleaning up my apps. I would probably get a new device. I would probably clean up and encrypt, start doing all those things. If you act under the mindset that you're in a wartime situation and your devices are compromised and you think and act, behave that way, all of a sudden, everything starts shifting in your favor.
All right. You've given us a big to-do list. Here's one thing I know for sure is people are going to have additional questions. Would it be appropriate if we gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Sure. So I'm Dr. Eric Cole, DRERICCOLE. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. You can also email me, ecole, ECOLE, at secure-anchor.com. And if you want more of my postings, my blogs, my videos, I also have a site, drericcole.org, DRERICCOLE.org, that also has all my information, my data, and my posts.
Fantastic. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on. If we can share from all of our different perspectives and the knowledge of how do we live in this connected world and not lose control of our data, but actually control it. That we know innately that's something that's so important in a digital transformation world. We have to think about this. So thank you for elevating the conversation. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve.